Hi everyone. Thank you for coming to the debate tonight. So that it will be like I'll ask the candidates and the referendum chairpersons to come and talk about their platform and their background for 5 minutes, and then the candidates can ask questions and the other candidates can answer for 1 minute, and then other people can ask their questions, and then we're set to go. Okay, so first I want to ask Mary from the Tribune to come and talk about her question.
Hi everyone, I'm Marie, so I'm the editor-in-chief at the McGill Tribune and the chairperson for the Vote Yes committee for our referendum questions. We have two questions. We have one that is specifically about validating the existence of the Tribune. So as an independent student group, we have to have our existence renewed by our members every 4 years, so that's up for renewal right now. And then the second question is a demand for a fee increase. So right now the fee for PGSS members for the Tribune Publication Society is 75 cents, and we're asking for a fee increase up to $3. So I'll address the fee increase in the questions afterwards, but quickly, the McGill Tribune is an independent student-run newspaper. So everything that happens at the Tribune, from making the newspapers to soliciting ads, to the people who sit on our board of directors, are all students. Our board of directors also happens to have undergraduate students and graduate students rep. I myself am a graduate student, so all of the opportunities that the Tribune offers are available to graduate students, which is important to stress. We publish a weekly newspaper. There's 5,000 copies, and then every day we publish more content online. So there's 7 editorial sections that you can find on the website and in the newspaper, and then additionally multimedia section, which puts out videos, podcasts, those sort of things. And then the other thing that the Tribune does that's really important to us, and that is also one of the reasonings for the ask for a fee increase, is that the Tribune has a really important educational mandate. So all of the editorial positions and all of the writing positions and everything that people do at this Tribune are kind of pitched as an educational opportunity. So in the absence of a journalism program and of a fine arts program, we kind of think of the Tribune as a way to hone the skills that you can't hone in the classroom. So we also host very frequent workshops. This year we've had workshops on like how to use Adobe programs like InDesign, how to design a website landing page, sort of journalism basics as well. And we also have an annual conference. So this year was our 5th edition. It was last week. We have a 3-day conference. We bring in speakers. This year we had the CEO of the Globe and Mail, a reporter from the New York Times. So that's also a really good opportunity to learn more about the industry in ways that you can't necessarily do at McGill. And then, so why does the Tribune need a fee increase? So right now, we, for the past 2 years, have been running at a deficit. So the student fees that we have right now aren't sufficient to fund all of the things that we do. We've been independent since 2010. So there's been the time for a existence referendum and for sort of like a fee evaluation in 2014, and there was no fee increase at that time. And the initial fee that was put in place didn't account for inflation and didn't account for things that might go up. So our printing fees have increased significantly, and that's one of the things that kind of is making us run at a deficit, and then didn't also account for the kind of expansion that would happen once we were editorially independent. So a lot of the educational things that we have going on can't be funded with the amount of money that we have. And so then also we're in touch with PGSS about how to expand the things that we do for PGSS members, because we know that we all are aware of the fact that there are a lot of opportunities for grad students, but grad students don't necessarily know that. There's a certain sort of gap in coverage, where we'll cover council meetings sometimes, and we cover the elections, but that's not good enough. And to be able to also do grad students a better favor, we need to be giving them more coverage. And then we also kind of looked at the fees that grad students pay. So there are very few fees that are actually below $1, like that 75-cent fee was. And then looking at ISG specifically, like the Tribune is, those rule also above $1. And so we felt that it was reasonable to align ourselves with what other independent student groups were doing and what other campus media were doing. So that was kind of our reasoning for that. I think that's it.
Can I ask a question? Yeah. So can you speak a little bit more about the extra things that you provide, like those workshops and things like that? And who primarily signs up for this? Is it open to both undergrads and grads? And what would be the participant rate usually for graduate students?
Yeah, definitely. So everything that we do is also, this is kind of a vague term, but is open to the McGill community. So it's not just necessarily members who are paying in, but those workshops, for instance, are open to the public. And the conference, we had a lot of people who don't go to McGill, so also even the Montreal community, really, just like people who have heard about the events will tend to show up. Attendance tends to be mostly focused towards undergraduate students, I think, in part maybe because of an imbalance of coverage that we're working with PGSS on resolving. That by the end of both Helena and mine's term, we want to make sure that we have a document in place to kind of facilitate communication between us and so on. So attendance does tend to be mostly undergraduate students. I've been trying to make a big push to get more graduate students involved, always sort of consider the graduate student body and what their diversity might mean for the events that we throw and how we can make them more accessible to them specifically. Yeah.
I know it's only been a week since our last council, but I just wanted to ask if there were any steps made yet regarding getting the Tribune physical copies to Mac Campus.
Yes. So there have not been steps made, but in rereading our internal documents, I figured out why that isn't the case. McDonald Campus Student Society members aren't members of the Tribune Publication Society, so they don't pay into the Tribune. It's still something that we'd be willing to consider, especially with extra funding, so we'd be able to pay our publisher to deliver. So maybe there's something that we can do. The reason for that is that they don't pay in right now, and so it's an extra cost.
Do you know if that also applies to MCGSS, the McDonald Campus Graduate Student Association?
Yeah.
Because they're under PGSS, but I know MCSS is not under SMU.
I think it does apply specifically to the MCGSS. Is that what the?
Yeah, MCSS is the undergrad part, and MCGSS.
I'm fairly certain it applies to both. Yeah.
There are a lot of strengths with graduate student associations, but there are a lot of weaknesses. And one of the weaknesses that we're very familiar with is our transition every year.
Mm-hmm.
And so this year we're very lucky that there's a good relationship, I think, between the Tribune and PGSS, and that we're trying to work together and have a positive dialogue and collaborate and enhance the opportunities for graduate students with respect to readership and content and so forth. I'm wondering though, we have the fortune of having you in this position as a graduate student this year, but next year we may not be as fortunate. What sort of institutional memory are you putting in place such that this relationship will continue on in the future?
Yeah. So what we're working on the executive with this year is sort of putting in place mechanisms to communicate better. So one thing that we have a problem with this with all of the content is that we can't necessarily always know what's happening on campus unless the interested student groups are telling us, which is kind of a flaw in the system. But so we're working with PGSS to make sure that we have sort of set deadlines to be communicated, that PGSS can communicate events to us. We can then pitch to students in a better timeline as well, which is really important, is that we get these events ahead of time so we can be, this is happening in 2 weeks, you don't need to stress about it and go to it in 2 days. We're also thinking about putting in place sort of a meet and greet or like a way for the execs and the Tribune editorial board members to get together, because that wasn't something that we were doing. The undergraduate students have sort of this privilege where we're usually housed in the university center, so the SMU execs are sort of down the hallway, and so that makes it very easy to communicate with them. So we want to make sure that we're making ourselves more available, more open to meeting with PGSS execs, because we only really see them when we interview them for candidate endorsements, and then sort of never again, and then that makes it really hard to have a relationship that's built on trust. So those are kind of the things. We also do always have at least one graduate student rep who sits on our board, and so our board takes care of a lot of those structural ideas of like reader outreach, contributor development is also one of the big things that they take care of. Similarly, the conference. So all of those sort of big relational structural things that the Tribune does all fall under the board's mandate, and there's always going to be a graduate student advocating for graduate student interests on the board.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much.
Sarah, could you share the mic with me?
Yeah, is it working?
No.
No. Okay. Yeah.
So thank you very much. So I'll ask Dakota to come. He's running for second this year.
Hi everyone. So I think I know pretty much everyone here. But for those who don't know me, my name's Dakota. I come from Nova Scotia, and I'm a PhD student here in the Department of Physiology. And I did my undergraduate degree at Dalhousie University in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And sort of just to speak a little bit to my experience, which is what and why I think I'm qualified for the running for the position of Secretary General. So I first became involved in PGSS when I was elected VP External of my PGSA, and as VP External, I am the PGSS counselor for my department. And then also coming to council, I started getting a lot more interested with PGSS, so I started becoming more involved in various different committees. So some of the committees, or the committees I currently sit on or have sat on in the past. So I was a member of the PGSS Judicial Board, where I did resign so I could participate in this election. As well, I'm a member of currently Maria's Academic Affairs Committee, as well as the current Equity Commissioner's Equity and Diversity Committee. As well, I'm a member of the Family Care Caucus, and at the McGill level, I sit on the Academic Policy Committee, as well as the Committee on Student Discipline, the Joint Board Senate Committee on Equity, Subcommittee on Queer People, and I am currently one of the 2 student representatives for the research center that our lab is based in. And I'm also on the executive board of this research center by virtue of being a student representative, as well as I've participated in a couple of different departmental cyclical reviews. So I'm familiar with going to the students and asking them what their needs are, and I'm very comfortable with telling the administration what the needs of students are. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about my platform. Two more broader things is, as it's outlined in the SAM, the Secretary General is the face of PGSS. So they represent PGSS to the Senate and the Board of Governors. And so by being a member of 2 Senate committees as well as 1 Joint Board Senate committee, I feel I have a decent understanding of how these bodies are run to be an effective member on these 2 different committees. As well, the Secretary General is responsible for maintaining the various governing documents of PGSS. And through the diligent efforts of our current Secretary General, we've undergone an extensive governance audit here in PGSS. So there's going to probably more likely be quite extensive changes coming to PGSS within the next month to the next year, 2 years. Unclear at this point. But essentially, I think it's really important for the next Secretary General to have an intimate knowledge of how PGSS works in order to make sure that these changes that are coming to be effective, particularly when it comes to PGSS's structure, accountability, and sustainability. And then more broadly, when it comes to other things that I'll focus on that are outside of the mandate of Secretary General, I would focus on promoting graduate student success, particularly by working with the graduate and postdoctoral studies, to advocate for funding for all graduate students, because not all graduate students at McGill actually do get funding. And I think it's very important, as the financial affairs officer has said several times at council, is that it's important for all students to at least have some sort of financial stability when they're students here at McGill. As well, I would like to work with the incoming financial affairs officer to increase funding accessible to the PGSS members, particularly through the grants program and the newly coming travel awards program. I would advocate for fair treatment of all graduate students. So in particular, international students face increased challenges when it comes to access to health insurance, tuition, and funding compared to their Canadian counterparts. So it's important for PGSS to advocate for increased accessible funding for these students. I'd like to work to to continue the efforts to re-engage the students here at McGill. Particularly, PGSS struggles with maintaining committee memberships. So I would like to work with the local PGSAs of the various departments to really try and get graduate students to come and start having an interest again in PGSS. As well, I would like to work to increase stronger relations with the McGill administration, and again, I'd like to commend this year's executives for doing this very well, and I'd like to continue this into the future. And given my experience on several McGill committees, I feel I have a good working relationship with several of the McGill administration, so this would be a good working start. And then lastly, I want to work to increase the accessibility of the PGS representatives. So oftentimes, graduate students who are not involved in council, or even sometimes graduate students who are involved in council, will see graduate students, or will see, or the executive and commissioners are often seen as kind of these unknown figures, and the inner workings of PGSS are often kind of seen as very secretive and opaque. So I'd like to work in the future by increasing the accessibility of your representatives, particularly your executive and commissioners, to the general body of the graduate students at McGill, and also increase the transparency of how students can access material at PGSS. So that's kind of my platform. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you.
I have 2 questions.
Okay.
Am I allowed 2 or 1?
You can go for one, and if any other candidate doesn't have question, you can go for this one.
Okay, so you've read the governance audit, right?
I have.
Okay. So if you had to pick one thing to make sure that it happens next year, for 100% sure, what would you want that thing to be? And what was the main issue that would cause you to want to change this?
The thing that I think came up the most during the governance audit is the unsustainable amount of work that the executive currently have to undergo, and I think restructuring of how the executive work, whether we use the model that is proposed by the governance audit or we don't, that's up for debate, whether this is the best model or not. But I think essentially working on the workload of the current executive, I think, is a very important aspect of how PGSS may change in the future.
So first and foremost, thank you for running, and thank you for showing your interest in being so involved. I think throughout the past few months, with respects to showing the initiative that you truly are invested in this position, coming out and seeing exactly what the position has. If I had a question for you, it would be with respects to your experience as a counselor over the past several months. What would you like to see changed at council in your role over the upcoming year as Secretary General?
How we could do this, I'm not exactly sure at this moment, but I think increasing sort of I don't want to say knowledge, but the understanding of what counselors are voting for. I think a lot of times counselors don't exactly know what they're voting on, and I think it can be a little problem because sometimes what we are voting on are very important issues. So I don't, whether that be better explanations in the motivation or longer access to the council packages, that can be an ongoing discussion. But I think that's honestly one of the bigger things. And also, and you've tried this very hard this year, and I commend you for it. But engaging students who don't tend to speak. As you know, council is dominated by a few voices, and it's very nice and it's very refreshing to get voices of people who don't speak all the time. Me being one of those voices, I will tell you, I speak a lot at council.
So you mentioned the governance audit. Is there anything in particular that you're excited about in the governance audit that you'd really like to see implemented? And are there any things in that audit that kind of give you reservations and you're more on the side that you hope don't get implemented? Pause.
So reading the first, so this is the first draft of the audit, so it will more than likely change. But my first impressions of the audit, the thing that I am not super enthusiastic about is the recommendation to remove the external affairs officer. I think this sort of devalues what the external affairs officers have done in the past years. And by essentially bringing the position to a commissioner position, the person who would then take on that external commissioner position, they aren't, essentially the job is too big for a commissioner position. I don't think being paid those 3 hours as is mandated in the SAM is enough for the commissioner to travel to Quebec City and speak with the government, or to talk with the various unions either provincially or federally. So that's the thing I would probably have a little bit more reservations about. The things that I'm excited about the change is, as I've mentioned, sort of the restructuring to sort of alleviate some of the pressures of the various executive positions, be it either the introduction of those new commissioner positions that are potentially being suggested, but ultimately, just the restructuring of how the workloads of the various executives will change, and I think that can make PGSS much more efficient. You said you had a second question.
Oh, okay. In your speech, you said that the current activities of the executives are opaque. We have all our minutes and everything published online on a bi-weekly basis after the previous one was approved, obviously. Same thing for our board of directors meetings, executive commission meetings, and we have monthly council reports for each executive, right? So what other steps can be taken to increase transparency or increase awareness that these things are even out there? Like, what else do you want to implement?
So I think one thing that would be really useful is, again, establishing this dialogue with the PGSAs to essentially not tell them, but to encourage them to take what is said at council from their externals back to their PGSA and then relate it to their students. I know that's not necessarily the responsibility of PGSS and it's the responsibility of those PGSAs, but I think if we can reiterate that on several occasions, that would be a good thing. The other thing is, I know currently non-commissioners don't have access to the executive reports. They get
Everybody can see it. It's public for PGSS members.
Okay. A couple of people I know that whenever they try, they get access denied, but again, that could just be an oversight and could easily be fixed.
There's always been an issue of I like every year when the exec gets together, there's an effort made to reach out to all 60 or so PGSAs, and that's a lot. We don't have faculty student associations like Smoot does or in undergrad, so it's just every department for themselves, and it's a task. I tried. I think I got through like 20, met with 20 different PGSAs before I just had to stop because I got busy.
Right.
So I guess, would you be open to an idea where there would be a committee of some sort, or where like either the presidents or the externals met with the SecGen or someone to have monthly updates where they provide reports directly to you, or like someone, a commissioner, a position you create, so that we have better communication with PGSAs. I think that's
Absolutely.
integral to improving everything from turnout at events like this, or just consultation processes, just getting them more involved with PGSS. As finance, I always strive to say that you're giving us millions of dollars in your fees, and you're letting a group of 60 or so people, the council, decide what to do with it. So I think that's something that I would suggest. But would you suggest?
I agree. I think that's a really good idea. I mean, maybe monthly might be a little too frequent for some PGSAs. Maybe we meet once a semester, or however. But I agree. I think that's a very good idea. Bringing the presidents together, and I think at the same time that would would encourage collaboration between PGSAs. I know with my current PGSA, we do collaborate quite a bit with experimental medicine and pharmacology, and it has been nothing but good. It's really good to have new perspectives from different students, as well as you get to talk to people who you honestly probably don't see all the time. Particularly X-Men, most of those students are at the Glen, whereas physiology, not most of us, but a good portion of us are here at downtown campus. So it's a good way to foster collaboration also.
Essential skills training.
Yeah. Exactly.
What's in that audit that you don't see that you would impose or would implement throughout the upcoming year with respect to the governance structure?
What do you mean by not implement?
So is there anything in the governance audit report as it currently is that you would implement or seek to implement or take the initiative to do that isn't actually written in the report itself as it currently stands?
To be honest, I haven't thought of that. I think the current governance audit is actually pretty comprehensive and kind of gets majority of the major concerns that have been sort of in PGSS for several years now, and now actually provides it in a document, which I think gives a little bit more weight to it than people just saying, hey, this is an issue. Currently, I haven't thought exactly, but I'm definitely open to discussing with the executive of potential ideas, as well as council, obviously.
Thank you very much.
Should work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Perfect. Right after I'm done. I love it. I'm actually very happy. I hate microphones.
So now I'll ask Connie to come. She's running for Financial Affairs Officer.
All right.
Like that.
And the mic works.
Hi, yeah, so I'm Connie and I'm running for Financial Affairs Officer, and I have been at McGill since 2014 when I started as an undergrad as a Bachelor of Science, and I studied immunology. And then right after I finished my undergrad, I started my master's the next semester in the summer of 2018. And when I started as a graduate student, I was looking for ways to get more involved with the graduate community, and that naturally brought me to PGSS. And then one of the first things I joined was the Committee of Monetary Affairs. And my time on the Committee of Monetary Affairs has been extremely informative, and I've worked closely with our current FAO, Sabat. And on the CMA, we've been able to really implement a lot of new things this year. So one of the things Sabat wanted to do was to increase kind of the scope of the current grants program. So he increased the cap, and we've kind of like broadened the eligibility criteria. And by doing so, we've really been able to increase the amount of grants that are going out to the students and going, really being utilized. So it's good to see that fund really, going to good use. And another thing that we implemented this year was the Travel Awards program, and this is currently ongoing, and so hopefully this goes very well. But being on the CMA has given me insight into kind of like what the FAO does, kind of how we spend these grants and these funds, and it's led me to see maybe what the strengths of the current programs are and where the weaknesses lie. And so it's really being on the CMA that's kind of allowed me to first run and then really come up with like a platform on which I think things could improve for the next year. So that, along with just my currently I'm involved with my own graduate association, so the Microbiology and Immunology Graduate Association. So I'm able to speak with students and kind of see what the needs of the PGSAs are. And I've also worked as a teaching assistant, so I've really been able to interact with a broad range of graduate students and kind of know what people are looking for PGSS to do and what people don't understand about PGSS, which brings me to my platform. So one thing I'd like to do is kind of build on what our current FAO Sabat has been doing, which is to really maximize funding for student initiatives. So as you said, we've been really improving it a lot, and I think there's some certain things in the SAM that are maybe restrictive or are ambiguous and don't make sense, and I think we could clean up the terms of the grant program even more to encourage more novel and exciting student initiatives. Another thing I would like to do is continue supporting funding for extracurricular programs that enhance members' personal and professional developments. Another thing I would like to see in terms of the way the grants are spent is increased transparency and access. So I would like to see, so currently online we can see the budgets, and I'd really like to be able to put on budget reports because I actually am not a counselor, so I don't have access to all the reports that the counselors have access to. So I think making that broadly available would be ideal. And I'd also like to make things more clear. So as I said, I'm not a counselor and I'm just a regular PGSS member. And so as it stands, sometimes it can be tough to understand the budgets, the fee levies, and everything like that. So I'd really like to implement some documents that help make the budget breakdown more understandable for just your average regular PGSS member. Another thing I would like to do is to make myself more accessible for people who have questions about how to apply for grants and the different programs we have and the different supports that we have for the PGSAs. And one way I would do this is just simply by fulfilling a weekly office hour and just making that well known that I'd be available to answer any questions regarding the financial affairs of PGSS. I'd also look to expand additional revenue sources. So as I mentioned, we've kind of been expanding all these programs during this past year. And one thing with this increased spending is I'd like to make sure that like we also have the revenue to keep up and to not spend through all the surplus that PGSS currently has. And so one way I'd like to do this is one, optimize the PGSS investments by working with the finance committee of the board of directors. And I'd also like to see more involvement of sponsorship in the PGSS. So currently, the internal affairs officer works a lot with like sponsors and such during the orientation period, and I'd really like to see that those relationships continue throughout the year and potentially become a bigger revenue source for the PGSS as a way for us to offer more services to students. And finally, one thing I'd really like to do is just to advocate financial support for all members. So I know that one of the biggest stressors in graduate life is simply having enough to live and to spend. And I understand that PGSS members come from a wide array of backgrounds. They're in different locations, they study different things, they're in different places in their life. And so knowing all this, I'd really like to advocate for a fair and livable compensation for all PGSS members. Yes, so that's my platform. So any questions?
I do have a question.
Yes.
I ask nice questions. So yeah, you mentioned the sponsorship thing, which is the first thing I thought of when I see you walk up.
Yeah.
We had a sponsorship coordinator for this orientation, and so like that lasted a few months. Some cool people got in on that deal, right?
Yeah.
So how would you want to continue this? Would you want to have that sponsorship coordinator like full time, part time? Would you want to take on that task yourself? Would you want to create an ad hoc committee? What do you want to do to make this actually happen?
Yeah, so I definitely have to look into the details about how each of those would work, but I think definitely having one person, whether it be me or someone else, that's dedicated on like keeping those relationships, because I think like a committee and like switching people and kind of like I think it's really important to have like the one person that's in contact and kind of keeps that contact throughout the year so that you can really foster that relationship with that sponsor and make sure that we're getting the most we can out of them. Yes.
What did the previous internals affairs officer do to like keep the strong relationship with sponsors? And how do you plan to either continue or change what she did in the past?
Well, so I don't know exactly what she did as I wasn't really involved with that, but I know that she was able to secure a lot of sponsors for the orientation events. And so because we have already kind of started fostering those relationships right at the beginning of the year during orientation, I think it would be an opportune time to kind of just continue with those same sponsors. So I wouldn't necessarily change anything. It would just be more an extension of what already happens. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
So you mentioned about removing some of the language in the SAM that is ambiguous or restrictive when it comes to sort of increasing the accessibility of the grants fund. Can you speak specifically to what you would want to change a little bit?
Yeah, so yeah, on my time in the CMA, I've kind of really become familiar with the grants program. And I think, for example, one line that often kind of trips me up is a bit is that we are not obligated to fully fund projects that have already happened. And I don't think this is a necessary point, as I think like we have a lot of applications where like last year we tried this new event, it was really great, the turnout was very good, and then technically according to the way the SAM is written, we're not supposed to fully fund those events a second time. And that to me doesn't make sense, as if an event was very successful and very well attended the first time, I'd like to encourage those events to keep happening. And I'd like PGSS to support events that people enjoy and people attend and people like. So that would be an example of one line that I think could use revision. Anything else? Yes.
So with the governance audit, there's a proposal to create some new positions, both commissioner and staffing positions. How do you think that would fit within the current PGSS budget?
Yeah, so I haven't actually seen the governance audit, well, because I'm not a counselor, but yeah, how like the new positions within the governance audit would fit within
Just within the PGSS budget.
the PGSS, because I believe it's a lot more personnel and it's a lot more commissioner positions and the same amount of exec positions. And yeah, I definitely think there'd have to be a restructuring and possibly to accommodate that, because I wouldn't want to take away from the services that we're currently giving in terms of grants and funding. So the way to accommodate that may just be either, like I mentioned, through like increasing sponsorship and other revenue, or just through increasing the membership fee. Yeah. So, but this is definitely something I'd have to confer on more and kind of speak to the other executive about how that would happen. Yeah, and actually reading it. Yes.
So investments is always a tricky business when it comes to student associations. We're not-for-profit organizations, but we still have to stay afloat and be sustainable with the type of revenues that we collect. I guess, do you have any concrete ideas of how you'd like to change the investment policy? Currently, if you didn't know, which is fair because a lot of people don't, we essentially just have saving accounts for things that are not being used.
Yeah.
So it's great. We make tens of thousands of dollars of interest every year, and then that's the type of interest revenue that we get from that. So what would you propose of changing our investment policy? Because you could argue that there isn't really one currently, but we're also a not-for-profit organization with a very healthy surplus that when we get audited annually, they're like, you should be spending this money. So how do you balance the fact that we need to spend our money with the fact that we also need to generate revenue to make sustainable?
Yeah, so I definitely just think that keeping the PGSS money and just sitting in savings is not the way to go. I do think we should either be spending it and putting that back on the students, or investing it, which is in a way investing in the future students. In terms of a concrete goal, I think that, like you mentioned, like we either spend this money or we start developing that investment policy, because I believe we don't really have one at the moment, and I'd really like to start working with that finance committee to start at least forming like a policy that we can work on over the course of the year.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
And our last candidate would be Adam. Oh, sorry.
Oh, it's very
Because you told me, I was like, and then I was looking at you, I was like, she didn't tell us. I'm so sorry. You can go first. He's running for internal. I'm so sorry.
Hi everyone, my name's Adam Smart. I'm running for the Internal Affairs Officer position. So I basically have 4 main points that I want to address in my platform, but I'll get to that after I introduce myself. So I'm currently a master's student in the integrated program in neuroscience, and I'm doing a project on Parkinson's disease using mouse models, and I'm also looking at small molecule inhibitors to treat Parkinson's disease. Recently, I've had volunteer experience at the Richardson Hospital, where I helped senior patients who've suffered strokes with rehabilitation, and involved a lot of communication and making their experience very enjoyable. I'm also, I've been trained for active listening, so I'm very good with hearing people's complaints and kind of dealing with them. And I'm also, I have suicide alert training in case there's ever anything that becomes so severe that it would need that. This year I've attended plenty of events. I'm a first semester master's student. So, but in just one semester, I've attended board games night, the pajama party, and many others, and I look forward to attending more in the future. So the basics of my portfolio, what I'm campaigning for. So just after you'll provide me comments on this, but the first goal is to plan for orientation week. So I want the new students to have a very well organized orientation week that is to the full PGSS standard, that is firstly environmentally friendly, where there's not a lot of excessive waste, where there'll be recycling bins around and we won't provide like excessive materials. It'll be a fun orientation week, like the pajama party, with like activities that kind of push boundaries and make people be very outgoing and enjoy themselves. An adventurous one where they can go outside and also outside of McGill, and also informative so that they can learn all the services that McGill has to offer for them. And I want to welcome McGill students, like properly give them a McGill welcome. They're already excited to be here, but we should give them orientation week, or the 2 weeks that it isn't, so they can really like show that excitement before like everything gets kind of busy studying. The second goal would be to increase the attendance at the PGSS events. I'd like to do that through inclusiveness during the events. So if you come to a PGS event, I want the people who come to feel like they're a part of the group while they're there. So by promoting certain conversations during event and talking between group members, and every event will have that kind of idea incorporated into it to some degree. Also through social media. So in the past, I was at a cross-country skiing event, and I was in a PGSS. I was at the event. I took a picture of myself and used a hashtag, and then people started coming up to me saying they had seen me on PGSS.com, and that's something that I think is a great way to promote attendance at these events. And also, I'd like to communicate with the other PGSAs to know about what's going on campus in terms of events. I'll communicate with the regular members before events, during events, and after events to get their feedback. So if they're having problems signing up, if during the event there's something wrong that needs to be addressed, or if after, through like a survey, we could have a review and try to improve for the future. And I'll make myself available in the evenings on almost any day, or at my lab at the Lady Davis Institute in case needed. And I'll continue the portfolio of the past internal affairs officer. I'll build on her work, and especially in terms of orientation, and I'll also communicate with her during the period before I begin my office or before the elections happen, if I am elected in May, to kind of build up my experience. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry. So thank you for your presentation. Our current internal affairs officer has done a great job and has hosted, like, I think this year we'll have over 100 events. 126 events. And a lot of those events require the IAO's personal presence. Could you kind of tell us about how you plan on maintaining the balance of maintaining your academic, like your degree and schoolwork, with the extensive involvement that is required for the IAO, given how many events we have?
Yeah, so I'm aware that there's a lot of events, and that's, of course, I plan to attend most of them, almost all of them, if possible. Of course, within reason, I won't compromise school, but that's really not the issue. I will be attending most of the events, and I don't have any reason not to be attending them in the evening. So it should be mostly. I am at the Lady Davis Institute, so transport sometimes can be complicated, but I think I'll also deal with that in the events as well. I'll keep that in mind when planning.
Do you plan on, sorry, I'll just to go off of that. In that sense, do you plan on making more use of the internal affairs committee, the committee that you'll have, to perhaps run some of the events more autonomously if you can make it?
Yeah, so I'll definitely be in communication with them, especially about what events are going on, and make sure everyone's aware. I think that they're part of, in a way they're part of the previous internal affairs officers kind of group. So it's important for me to constantly be making sure they're aware and then building on what's been done in the past with them. Yeah. Anyways.
I'll go last. Please ask. Anything. I don't know what kind of food's gonna be.
What's one new event that you proposed that you'd most like to see?
Okay, interesting. I haven't really planned or thought of any particular event, but there's so many different types of events that I think are most interesting. It could be maybe a new specific cultural event that can be catered to one particular group. Maybe another social evening like during orientation week where there was that pajama party. But something along those lines would probably be what I would add to the current list of events that we offer.
my turn. So not only just events, but the internal affairs officer is also responsible for sending out a biweekly or fairly regular newsletter called the Newswire to most PGSS students that members that are signed up on it. The thing that has been brought up in the past is that it's almost exclusively only been available in English, and sometimes not everything is put up on there. And of course, all of our current and past internal affairs officers have always done their best to try to make this effective. But how do you feel about the lack of French translation? Consider that's a standard thing within McGill and like even embedded in some kind of McGill policies. And considering there's technical limitations and people feel the need to unsubscribe if they get too many newsletters, how would you try to balance that kind of issue that's been ongoing for many years? And are you bilingual? Can you translate?
Okay. So just I'll touch on those kind of two points I think I'll address. So firstly, I'm from Montreal. I went to high school here, CEGEP, and I am mostly bilingual, so I can pretty much understand French very well. So I think that if that's a common complaint, it's something that especially the previous internal affairs officer I would like to discuss with her if that's something that I would seriously need to consider to improve PGSS attendance at events. And I think that through the plan to kind of increase awareness of PGSS and attendance at the events, that people will kind of see us in a different light when they get the newsletter, and they'll take a look through it and then want to attend our events after.
Great, thank you very much.
So am I allowed to?
Yeah. I apologize again. Please come. Maria's running for academic affairs officer again.
Okay, yes, again. So everybody can probably guess I've been around here for a while, judging that I'm asking so many questions. So my name is Maria. I've been here at McGill since 2011. I finished a bachelor's degree here in honors psychology and then started a PhD in neuroscience right away. And I was really passionate about academic affairs from the start when I joined my PGSA and Brain Reach North in 2014, and then I stopped around 2017. But that's when I really got involved in PGSS. And so since then, I've held 3 major roles, so I'll go quickly over that. Starting June of 2017, I served as the Student Support Commissioner. So I informed students about their rights and responsibilities and oversaw the Member Legal Support Fund. And so the confidential nature of my job of dealing one-on-one with really difficult subjects gave me a lot of first-hand awareness of the problems that students face, especially with academic affairs and supervisory relations and publishing issues and so forth. As of November 2017, I was elected as the Secretary General / President. So I was involved on 18 groups within McGill and PGSS. And so if you look in the executive minutes that are public available, and on my general meeting report, I was really active in supporting all of the members' portfolios, all while undertaking my own stuff. So those were things like trying to improve or clarify PGSS rules and procedures and governing documents. I did this insane like close to 300-page report on the history, and that I was collaborating on with several different people to try and understand what gaps were missing in the past and how we can improve upon it. And so yeah, I was able to carry out the massive majority of my duties and try to go above and beyond what was expected of me. And then this year, I was the current academic affairs officer. So if anybody here signed up for a committee, you probably met me. So let's see. As seen on my campaign website, which you can ask me about later if you want to read it, my general meeting report at council, I successfully ran many core parts of my current mandate, all while taking on extra initiatives. I have improved communication between McGill and PGSS. We actually have some positive relationships going that I'm actually happy about. And yeah, I hosted several events for academic wellness, like a thesis info night, and then a wellness session to focus on work afterwards. I tried to strengthen PGSS transparency, including the documentation that was necessary for the Library Improvement Fund. We have a working MOA now, yeah. And there's also improved committee application procedures. And if you notice, there's a little free library in Thompson House now on the main floor, unless somebody put some board games and it got blocked. But yes, there is one, so you can take some books and enjoy those for free and return them whenever you like. So my extensive experience, personal drive, and synergistic leadership style speaks for itself in my accomplishments. If I am reelected, that would be a really significant advantage for the upcoming team. I would be bringing 2 years of experience and all of my institutional memory and all the history stuff I looked into, and it wouldn't require that much extensive training to learn about the role. And I have so many initiatives plans, and some good things popped into my head now while listening to the other people, but I'll just say the ones that I already have here. So the first one is to continue to try to reduce academic stress with better supervisory practices and peer support awareness. So this year with graduate and postdoctoral studies, we have actually moved so that students and supervisors have more communication about what is expected of each other. So there's more documentation on these agreements, and now the department's heads are pushing for it with GPS. And so the next steps would be to promote the reduction and stigmatization of mental illnesses or mental wellness, and also make sure that people are aware of all the great peer support resources that we have. A lot of them are grassroots and not publicly that well known. So if you kind of put them in one document and send that out at the beginning of the supervisor's mental health training 101, that would be great. Another huge issue that I've repeatedly heard about is student spaces and academic resources. And it's a really tough topic. Each department is different, each faculty is different, but you know, if you advocate to the right people, you might get your way. And I am chair of the Library Improvement Fund Committee, and if I do continue this job and get elected, I will still be the chair. We can try to change things with that fund. It has more than a good amount in it. So yeah, the third point would be student funding resource awareness. So I would like to continue to work with the PGS researcher and to kind of centralize all the hidden scholarship information that we don't know about beyond, you know, CIHR, FRQS, and try to put it in one cohesive document to give it to our members to make them aware of little things that they may apply for that they may not know. And my fourth point is external academic resources and advocacy. So I would like to collaborate with the external affairs officer or anybody on the team who is interested in external affair advocacy and reaching out, specifically on academic related initiatives. And this could be things about finding student space outside of McGill, like with Pieces of Woo, or who knows what else exists out there. We have to explore it. And so the fifth point would be to increase inclusivity in current resources and policies and make sure that people are heard and people are represented. I have focused so hard this year on trying to make sure that different voices are heard, but we need to hear up from specific groups in more detail and make sure that they're included in things like the policy against sexual violence and anything else that comes up. So these different types of groups could be, you know, graduate students who are also teaching assistants, so then they also carry the hat potentially of McGill staff. Postdoctoral statuses, there's not just one postdoc, there's multiple different types of postdocs. Some people, oh, okay, it says the computer's gonna die. So yeah, then there's also international students with who have a lot of specific circumstances, students with you know, disabilities or other needs, and also those with dependents. And there's a lot of other groups that need to have their voice better heard in a lot of current policies or current resources. So yeah, I will try to be a voice for you. I'll try to be a voice for progress. With my team this year, I have aided in advocating for PGSS views on policies against sexual violence and divestment from fossil fuels, among other little things here and there. I will continue to monitor progress on these topics and aim to take on anything else that is suggested to me. I have an open Google form looking for suggestions all the time. And I want to make sure that your voice is heard, and I will do my best to cater to your wishes and take on anything and not just focus on what is currently in my portfolio. I really want to expand and cater to what you want. So yes, if you vote for me, you're going to vote for experience, dedication, and inclusivity. Thank you. Thank you. Hi, Logan.
Can you repeat your position that you're applying for as well as your name?
Oh, I'm Maria. I'm currently the academic affairs officer, and I'm running for the same position for one more year, and hopefully I get it. Yes, Yvette.
You've been on PGSS exec for a couple of years now. What would you think? What are your main takeaways from each year? What have you learned from each successive year?
SecGen, synergistic leadership. Always be nice to people. Always try to work with people. Always be like happy and engaging, and listen to even unpopular opinions and try to put it together. Academic affairs. We need a lot better communication strategies, and I've tried implementing a bunch of new stuff that was outside of my mandate. So instead of getting reports from people once a semester, I now ask every month. Some people think it's annoying, but it's been helpful. And people feel like, PGSS is actually listening, it's getting better. And now I'm starting to think of moving that to monthly meetings. Another thing that can be done is definitely the PGSA thing. And the thing that popped into my mind while listening to all of this, the great idea that just hit me, and also that's something that was mentioned in the governance audit, is the idea of a volunteer program. Because right now, if you want to get involved in PGSS, you have to sit on a committee, and the mandate lasts 1 year. Some people see that and they'll be thinking, I'm not sure I can do that for an entire year. But if we had a policy on volunteering with some duties that are not as heavy duty or intensive, like they're little samplers, we can take some stress off of the workload of executives or commissioners, give people an opportunity to get involved that isn't for 1 long year. And it also can address some of the strains of where things are falling through the cracks or not getting done fast enough on time. But this policy, oh boy, a policy takes a lot of work in writing. You have to consider, make sure that these people have the same rights as commissioners and executives for respect in the Thompson House rules and everything like that. And can they get a certificate after they're done volunteering and all these lovely things. It just came to my mind. I'm friendly. You can ask anything. It doesn't matter. Yeah, it's okay.
No.
You're just smiling. Okay. That's good. Bye. Yeah, Helena?
Every single year, I think there's inherent challenges with working with a diverse group of people that come from diverse backgrounds and experiences. Given that you would be the veteran on the team, how would you harness those previous experiences to translate to a successful collegial year going forward?
So the good thing about being a veteran is that if there's an idea that's put on the table that hasn't been historically successful before, I can kind of warn that person. I don't want to be like, that's not a bad idea, but kind of be like devil's advocate and yeah, and maybe just tell them about it so that they have an informed decision, and then maybe we can still go through it if we do little tweaks here and there, or maybe we just go ahead and try anyways because different years get different reactions. And then the other thing too is that each new year and each new term comes with a new set of challenges which require new and fresh perspectives. So like my opinion won't matter more than anybody else. Like it's very much, I see it as an egalitarian thing, and I'm going to value my new team, whoever they are going to be, and do my best to work with them and see how they want to approach it, because even though sure I know the PGSS rules, maybe they know something that's outside of the box that's really cool that can answer that. You want to say something, Logan? No? Right? Yeah, that's it. Okay. Thank you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. I forgot.
So
Yeah.
I see that too.
Okay. Hi everyone. I'm actually just here for the Yes Committee for the Health and Dental Insurance Plan. So someone else was supposed to be here, but all right. Some people want to go to Mexico. Oh, this is recorded. Great.
They're handsome boyfriends, you can't fault them for that.
I know he can't really. Anyway.
That's fine. Status is tested.
Yeah. So my name is Siba and I'm the current Financial Affairs Officer of the PGSS. We have, along with the election of the candidates that you just heard from, the PGSS will also have 3 fee referendum questions that'll be coming up. You heard from, if you were here, you heard from some of them in the beginning. The McGill Tribune, one of our newspapers, they'll be asking a question to first renew their fee and then to increase it. You'll be receiving a question regarding the renewal and increase of the McGill Student Services fee to provide better mental health services. And the one I'm here to talk to you about is the health and dental insurance plan. So PGSS actually is the provider, well, Student Care is the broker that we use to give you guys insurance, but PGSS is like our liaison, is the liaison. So we basically charge all PGSS members a health and dental insurance fee fee, and then that's what you can use for your insurance. And if you have comparable insurance, you can provide the documentation. You can opt out of the health and dental insurance. So we are actually renewing it for the next 5 years. And the way we renew the plan is actually by setting a cap. So this isn't the amount that you will be charged, but this is the maximum amount you could be charged given the fact that insurance plans are based on premiums. So they go up and down on a monthly basis based on how many claims are made every month. So the current caps, the proposed increases are to the health plan is $299 and the dental plan is $210. So the total amount would be $509 a year. It's currently $471. That increase is actually only 7%. In the past, when we've done this, it's been as high as 14, 15, 20% increases. And keeping in mind, this is an increase set for the next 5 years to account for everything from inflation, potential premium changes. It's not what you're going to be charged, but that's what the question will ask, that do you agree that the cap can be set at those amounts in the event to kind of accommodate for the next 5 years? So that's the question. So I'm here from the Yes Committee because I obviously would like this fee to pass. It's already passed. It's just that if it doesn't pass and we don't agree to these new caps, we'll have to definitely cut back on services that we currently provide from the health and dental insurance plan. So in order to maintain the level of services that we're giving now, as well as ensure that we are kind of accommodating for the next couple of years, we're proposing this increase. That kind of happens all the time, but it's a smaller increase than in the past that we've done this. So if you have any questions about the health and dental insurance plan fee question, I can answer it. With regards to the actual services and things like that, your questions may be better geared towards the member services officer, but I'll try to answer those too if you have them. No? Oh, yes. Okay.
Thanks very much. All right, so I'll ask the candidates if they have any closing statements.
Wanna go as a group?
Let's go as a group. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll start off. Thank you for being here tonight. We know it's super late and you came to hear us and hear our platforms. I really super appreciate that. Hopefully you're excited as us to hear about more potentially, and hopefully everything works out and there'll be a good future year together if we all get elected. Yeah, so what are you looking most forward to?
I was going to say very similar things. Thank you for coming out. Actually, I agree with everything she said, and I hope the next year for PGSS is incredible.
I would reiterate exactly what they just said, with the added statement of I look forward to engaging in productive dialogue with council in the coming year.
I will reiterate. Thank you guys for coming out. Yeah.
And I look forward to
vote.
Yes. Remember to read campaigns and vote and try to get involved when you get involved in me. Yeah, I look forward to working with McGill administration and different bodies, PGSAs, general members, everybody. I want to get them more engaged in the next year, and I look very much forward to that. And let's hope it's really good. I'm super optimistic.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So if I may, just to provide some background, when I ran last year, or when we ran last year, there was only one person that came. The debate was in the middle of the day on a Friday, and one person that was involved with the organization for many years came and took the time out of their day to come and see who was running for these positions, or at that time even half of the positions, if you will. If I can ask for feedback, what made you guys come this evening? Hopefully, other than the free beverages, that made you decide to come and hear from these people, just so we can figure out what that connection was with you, that we can try to extend that to other individuals.
I was just supporting two friends.
Okay.
Speak your truth.
Are you the friend?
Yeah. Fair enough.
I'm a first-year doctoral student, and
Okay.
Yeah, I was interested in seeing sort of how the sausage is being made, and I also am over at the School of Information Studies, so it's like a 5-minute walk to get prepare.
The interesting thing is the librarians who School of Information Studies have used the making sausage, I think,
Yeah,
metaphor.
this is the second person I heard that this month. I should use that. Making the communication sausage.
I also,
It resonates.
so for So I'm interested also in seeing how sort of student government associations work at a large scale university as opposed to a small.
Well, there's 2 positions available. Y'all are interested? There's a stipend. I will say it's like even post-professional program, even like mid-PhD, it's been a very challenging experience and a very rewarding experience, and it's provided opportunities to learn in a way that none of those previous experiences have had. So if you want to spend more time with your friends over the next year and get to know them in a very unique, intimate basis, I would strongly encourage running for the 2 open additional positions that are there.
There are a lot of sandwiches in here, so please. eat everything.
Are there sausages?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.